A free mind is not an empty mind. Buddhist wisdom. Most people who sit down to meditate for the first time share the same hope. They want silence. They want the noise inside their head to stop. The running commentary, the replays of conversations that happened years ago, the anxious rehearsals of tomorrow. They close their eyes, and they try to push all of it away. A thought appears, they fight it. A feeling rises, they suppress it. And when the thoughts keep coming anyway, they open their eyes and think, I can't do this. My mind is too loud. I've watched this happen so many times, and every single time, something in me wants to say, your mind was never the problem. The goal you were given was the problem. Because somewhere along the way, we all picked up this belief that a peaceful mind is a mind with nothing in it. A blank screen. No thoughts, no emotions, no reactions, just emptiness. And we turned that into the destination. So whenever we sit down, and the mind keeps doing what minds have always done, thinking, feeling, remembering, worrying, we assume something is wrong with us. But think about this for a moment. If someone told you that physical health means not having a heartbeat, you'd immediately know that's absurd. A healthy heart beats. That's what it does. A healthy mind thinks. That's what it does. The question was never about stopping all of that. If you look closely at this desire to empty the mind, you'll find something surprising. It comes from pain. The thoughts that loop are painful. The anxiety is painful. And the most natural conclusion is, if I could just make it all stop, the pain would stop too. That makes sense. It's a very human response. But there's a deep irony buried inside it. The desire to wipe the mind clean. If you look at its texture, it is made of the exact same material as the suffering it's trying to escape. It is aversion. You don't like what the mind is producing, so you want to kill it. You're at war with your own inner life. And war, no matter how spiritual the language you dress it in, has never produced peace. It produces exhaustion. It produces numbness. It produces the feeling of having given up, which can look like calm from the outside, but feels hollow on the inside. The Buddha spent his entire teaching life pointing at something different. He never once told anyone to stop thinking or make the mind blank. What he said, again and again, was far more precise and far more useful. Understand the mind. See how it works. See what drives it. See what happens when you stop fighting it and start watching instead. When you stop treating the mind as an enemy and begin treating it as something to understand, a space opens up inside you, one that you never had to create by force. It was always there. You just couldn't see it while you were busy fighting. There's a word in this Buddhist tradition that gets misunderstood more than almost any other. Emptiness, sunyata in Pali. And the misunderstanding matters, because it sends people in exactly the wrong direction. In one of his discourses, the 𝐂𝐻𝐿 Sutta, the Buddha's close attendant, Ananda, asked him, I remember you saying that you now dwell in emptiness. Did I hear that correctly? The Buddha confirmed it. But then he explained what he meant. And this is where it gets fascinating. He said, look at this hall we're sitting in. This hall is empty of elephants, cows, horses, and mares. It's empty of gold and silver. It's empty of gatherings of men and women. But the hall is still here. The monks are still here. The space itself remains. And then came the key instruction. They regard it as empty of what is not there, but as to what remains, they understand that it is present. And the Buddha added that this is how emptiness manifests: genuine, undistorted, and pure. This carries enormous weight. Emptiness, in the Buddha's own words, means you see clearly what has fallen away: craving, clinging, confusion. And you see equally clearly what is still here: awareness, the capacity to know and feel and respond. The room is empty of certain things. The room is still full of life. I sometimes think of it like a room filled with fog. One approach is to drag all the furniture out, hoping that if the room is bare enough, the fog won't matter. The other approach is to leave everything where it is and let the fog dissolve. Once it clears, you see the table, the chairs, the paintings. All of it was there the whole time. The Buddha's emptiness is the second approach. The fog goes, the room stays. And the fog, in his teaching, has a very specific composition. It is craving, aversion, and confusion, the three forces that distort how we perceive everything. When a painful thought arises, craving wants it gone. Aversion pushes against it. Confusion spins a story around it. The pain is real, the thought is real, but the layer of reactivity wrapped around it, that's the fog. Remove it, and experience doesn't stop. What stops is the sense of being trapped. The experience keeps flowing, but you're no longer drowning in it. You can see this in everyday life. Think about the last time you received criticism. There was the criticism itself, the words, the tone, the information. And then there was everything the mind added on top: the sting of shame, the rush to defend, the story about what kind of person you are. The criticism was one event. The suffering came from the reactivity. When that reactivity clears, the criticism is still there, but now it's just information. The drama collapses. What remains is clarity. This is what the Buddha meant by emptiness. The mind becomes empty of the reactivity, empty of the compulsive patterns that distort experience. It does not become empty of life. And here I want to point out something remarkable. In his very first teaching at the deer park, the Buddha identified 3 types of craving that keep human beings stuck. The first is craving for sensual pleasures. The second is craving for continued existence, the desire to keep being, to become something, to last. And the third, the one people rarely talk about, is what the Pali texts call vibhava tanha, craving for non-existence, the craving to disappear, to obliterate experience itself. The Buddha placed it right alongside greed and ambition. All 3 are chains. So when someone desperately wants the mind to become blank, to make all thoughts vanish, from the Buddha's own framework, that craving is itself a form of bondage. You can cling to pleasure, you can cling to status, and you can cling to the idea of a perfectly empty mind where nothing will ever bother you again. All 3 grow from the same root. That's a hard thing to hear. But it also means you can stop chasing. You can stop trying to achieve a mental state that was never the point. And you can begin something far more interesting: learning to see clearly, right in the middle of everything. The Buddha himself, after his awakening, did not sit in silence for 45 years. He walked across northern India, talking to kings and farmers, and wandering philosophers and grieving parents. He listened. He debated. He told stories. And the monks and nuns who reached full liberation left behind some of the most vivid poetry in the ancient world. The Therigatha and Therigatha, describing rain on mountain forests, moonlight on rivers, the joy of a body that feels light after years of burden. These were people whose minds were more alive than ever, because there was nothing in the way anymore. A free mind, in the Buddhist sense, is not empty of experience. It is empty of the craving and confusion that hold experience hostage. Everything we've explored so far might sound clear enough as ideas. But life happens in the middle of notification sounds and deadlines and social media feeds. And it's in that everyday reality where these misunderstandings become most dangerous, because they stop being ideas and start becoming habits. The first habit worth examining is the gap between knowing and living. We live in an age of extraordinary access. You can read the entire Pali Canon on your phone, listen to thousands of Dharma talks for free. All of that is wonderful. But it creates a danger that previous generations didn't face: the illusion of understanding. You read about impermanence, and you think you get it. You hear a teaching on letting go, and the concept makes sense. You can even explain it to someone else over dinner. But then someone says one sharp word, and every bit of that understanding vanishes in a fraction of a second. What's left is raw reaction, the same reaction you had before you ever read a single word about Buddhism. This is the nature of knowledge that hasn't been lived. There's a vast distance between reading a menu and eating a meal. In the age of information, we have access to more menus than any generation in history, and the danger is that we confuse the reading with the eating. The Buddha described his teaching as something to be seen directly, through your own experience. The teaching becomes real the moment it stops being something you know and starts being something you do. When you notice anger rising and you stay with it instead of reacting. When someone hurts you, and for the first time, there's a gap between the pain and your response. That gap, that moment of awareness between stimulus and reaction, is where the whole practice lives. No amount of reading can create it. Only practice can. The second trap catches people who are genuinely sincere about their practice. It's the trap of turning spiritual life into another form of self-improvement. People come to meditation because they want to focus better, sleep better, handle stress better. Meditation can help with all of those things. But underneath those goals, if you look carefully, there's a familiar engine running. I need to become something better than what I am. And that engine, that constant push toward becoming, is itself one of the things the Buddha identified as a source of suffering. In the Sabbasava Sutta, he names 3 deep-rooted defilements that keep the mind in bondage. The defilements of sensual desire, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. That middle one, the desire to be reborn, bhavasava, runs deeper than it first sounds. It is the compulsion to always be turning into something else. Even a more enlightened person can be an expression of this pattern. The object of the craving changes, from status to serenity, but the craving itself stays intact. There's a real difference between effort that comes from seeing clearly and effort that comes from craving. One carries patience. Each moment of practice feels complete in itself. The other carries pressure. I'm not there yet. I need to be something other than what I am. And that pressure, the Buddha would say, is itself the suffering you're trying to escape. The third trap is perhaps the most invisible, because it disguises itself perfectly in the language of wisdom. It's the confusion between exhaustion and equanimity. Burnout has become so common that it almost feels normal. You run for years. Career, family, obligations, the constant pressure to perform, and then you hit a wall. You don't have the energy to care anymore. Things that used to make you angry don't anymore. There's a numbness that settles over everything, and it carries a strange kind of peace. Then you encounter a Buddhist teaching about equanimity, about the balanced mind, and you think, "That's me. I've arrived." But there's a world of difference between a mind that doesn't react because it sees clearly, and a mind that doesn't react because it has run out of fuel. Equanimity in the Buddhist teaching is one of the 4 highest qualities of the heart, standing alongside loving kindness, compassion, and shared joy. A person with equanimity feels everything, remains fully present, can meet whatever comes without being knocked off balance. A person who is burned out might show the same calm face, but inside, the lights have gone out. What makes this confusion dangerous is that it lets people use spiritual language to avoid getting the help they actually need. They call their numbness detachment. They call their disconnection non-attachment. And because the words sound right, they never look underneath to see that the thing they're calling freedom is actually the body's emergency shutdown mode. True letting go, in the way the Buddhist tradition describes it, always increases your capacity for contact. It brings you closer to life, closer to people, closer to the truth of what you're actually feeling. If the thing you're calling letting go requires you to feel less and engage less in order to maintain itself, then it might be worth asking whether it's wisdom or a survival mechanism wearing wisdom's clothes. There are 2 verses in the Dhammapada, in the chapter on the perfected ones, that I think are worth reading slowly. They describe the Arahat, the person who has walked the entire path and come out the other side. And I bring them up not because they're about some unreachable saint on a mountaintop, but because of what they reveal about freedom itself. If even those who have gone all the way still think, still speak, still act, still feel the ups and downs of life, then the idea that freedom means shutting all of that down falls apart completely. Verse 95 says, "Like the earth, the Arahat is patient and is not provoked to respond in anger. Like the doorpost, he is firm. He is unperturbed by the ups and downs of life. He is serene and pure like a lake free from mud." And verse 96 says, "An Arahat is calm in his mind, calm in his speech, and also in his deed. Truly knowing the Dhamma, such an Arahat is free from moral defilements and is unperturbed by the ups and downs of life." Read those again and notice what they do and do not say. They do not say the Arahat has stopped thinking, speaking, or acting. They say the thinking is calm, the speech is calm, the action is calm. Everything continues. What has changed is the quality. It is no longer driven by defilement, no longer agitated by craving or aversion. And notice the phrase that appears in both verses, unperturbed by the ups and downs of life. The ups and downs are still there. Life still throws its weight around. The difference is that none of it has the power to knock this person off their center anymore. That's what freedom looks like at the highest level. And the images the Buddha chose to describe it tell us everything. The earth does not refuse what comes to it. People walk on it, dig into it, build on it. And it remains, patient, absorbing whatever arrives without losing its nature. It is not provoked to respond in anger. That doesn't mean it feels nothing. It means nothing on its surface has the power to make it react with hostility. The doorpost stands firm while the door swings open and closed. Life moves around it. People come and go. The wind blows, and the post does not waver. And the lake free from mud, it is still a lake, still full of water, still reflects the sky, still holds life within it, still responds to the wind. The only thing gone is the sediment that made it impossible to see the bottom. The verse calls this person serene and pure, not empty, serene. These are images of fullness, of depth, of life. There is no void in any of them. And if this is what the highest freedom looks like, then the lesson for the rest of us is clear. A free mind is not a mind that has stopped working. It is a mind that can stand steady in the middle of everything: the storms, the noise, the pain, the joy, the confusion, without being swept away. And this is the point that ties everything together. A free mind can be this open, this alive, precisely because craving and aversion have lost their grip. When they drive every experience, the mind contracts. It clings to what it likes and pushes away what it doesn't. That contraction is what we experience as suffering. When the grip loosens, the mind opens. And what comes in is everything that was always there but couldn't be fully received. The Buddha, in the Sabbasava Sutta, says, "The ending of defilements is for one who knows and sees." And what must you know and see? Rational application of mind and irrational application of mind. Wise attention looks beneath the surface, sees causes and conditions, watches each mental event arise and pass without being pulled into it. As the Buddha puts it, when you apply the mind rationally, defilements don't arise, and those that have already arisen are given up. A mind with wise attention still thinks, still feels, still meets life fully. But there's a clarity in the encounter that changes everything. The whole teaching, when you let it settle, comes down to something surprisingly simple. The Buddha didn't ask you to become someone else or achieve some special state. He asked you to see what's already here, clearly, directly, without the fog of craving and aversion. The question worth carrying with you is this: what you have been calling peace, is it a door that has been closed, or a door that no longer fears being open? You don't need to manufacture this. Effort helps you recognize what was already there, but the very attempt to empty the mind is one more task the mind gives itself, one more version of, "I need to get somewhere I'm not." And that attempt, like everything born from craving, will keep you spinning. The practice begins somewhere simpler. It begins the moment you put everything down and look at what is actually here, right now, in this mind, in this breath. You won't find a void there. You'll find something far more alive and far less trapped than you ever imagined.